Hello, hello. Back with another check-in of the birthday boys. Robert Falcon Scott's uh, ill-fated Antarctic expedition. And in this section, Scott only kind of figures in the first bit of it. This is all from the point of view of Lieutenant Henry Robertson Brthdy Bwrs, July 1911. Brthdy is a kind of very he's a devout Christian, kind of duties, kind of about duty, a very kind of solid, short guy who actually, because he is short, compact, hasn't actually been as affected by the cold as the other members of the expedition. At the very beginning of this chapter, we have sort of a little bit of a kind of a party thing that they have where, they're living under extreme conditions and they're definitely kind of blowing off steam. Though part of that blowing off steam is someone gets a bit of a punch up in the midst of it. Their Bowers does have a kind of interesting little observation about the owner, about Scott, thinking, I think I know what ails the owner. He's absolutely sound as regards to what's right, but he lacks conviction. He simply isn't stupid enough to be convinced his is the only way. In the circumstances, it's a dangerous trait. So yes, again, kind of pointing to the fact that he is a good guy. He's not a dumb guy, but he's somebody who's not stupid enough to just go, no, my way, that's it. That's the only thing. But what this does is where they are going on a Bowers, Bill, Dr. Wilson, and Cherry, what's his full name? Apsley Cherry Garrard, but for the purpose of this, Cherry, are going on a separate little expedition. Wilson wants to go and collect emperor penguin eggs because he's convinced that the study of them will kind of link birds with lizards, with the basically dinosaurs and that sort of thing. So they go on this trek, which is supposed to last like 10 days, and ends up lasting much longer. They get kind of quizzed by Scott at the beginning because they're taking a whole bunch of supplies, and he's like, I want all this stuff back. And like, why are you taking so much oil? It's like, well, we want to be prepared. And he's like, okay, fine, but whatever. But yes, and so they start trekking in July in what is super intense weather. They're quickly in like negative 67 degrees temperature doing this trek. Turns out that Cherry, he wears glasses, and without his glasses he's blind. And guess what? You can't actually put on your face when you step outside, and any moisture or anything like that will just immediately freeze solid. You can't wear your glasses, so he is functionally blind. He is a functional blind man going through this, and indeed they're all roped together, and he keeps on falling into crevasses and having to get hauled back out again and again and again. They're and they actually, against the odds, they actually do make it to where the penguins are. There's actually a lot fewer in number. Only the two men don't go down because they have to lower them down, and there has to be someone on the other end to be able to kind of pull them back up again. And since Cherry can't do much but just kind of be there, they leave him there. They go down, they collect some eggs, they get back up. Cherry pulling, and they, even then, it's like you can see that the tension has just been growing and growing in this thing, and like they're all very kind of polite. And I mean, a part of the thing is you're in such extreme circumstances that you kind of have to hold on to that, or else you just fall on each other's throats and kill each other. But they do, it took us 19 days to reach Cape Crozier. He was terribly bothered because he told the owner that we'd be there and back in 10. There's also kind of good things in this trip of, like, yet again, with kind of like, why are these men doing this? And there's a thing here on page 145 of the world is changing, and soon the machine will be of more importance than the body, and it's tremendous luck to have been born into the last few seconds of an epoch in which a man is still required to stand up and be counted. So we've got very much kind of like, oh, changing times, changing things of masculinity, of like being able to do kind of great feats, is that's going to be slipping by, and this is their chance to kind of, for these kind of guys to kind of be able to kind of grip that. And I mean, it's also, it's like, it is stunning landscape. They are in the middle of, there's nobody around, but they are in awesome, awestruck areas. It's like, it wasn't all mystery. This is still on page 145. One of our habits, on one of our halts, we lay spread eagle on the ice and stared up at a sky blazing with the glory of the most wonderful aurora I'd ever witnessed. They travel at night for the most part. I groaned beneath the splendors of those silken curtains, yellow, green, and orange, billowing at the window of the heavens. And they, tell me, pleaded Cherry. Without his glasses, the whirling display was but a blur. And there's a thing here, because I was falling, diving towards a sea whose ripples spread and widened until they touched the edge of my soul. And then we get this kind of really comedic thing, but also sort of semi-telling thing of, I know at one point Bill began to squeal with laughter. Our lips were so split and caked with dried blood, it was painful to open them fully. And when we demanded to know what was funny, he said, "Ask me what I'm doing here, you dear fellows." Ever obliging, Cherry croaked, What are you doing here, Uncle Bill?" And he replied, "I've never liked crowds." And then we all squealed, because we could see the humor of it. 3 ragged, frosted figures lying on their backs in the darkness of nowhere, emitting cries like stuck pigs as God's own paintbrush splashed among the stars. It's just like, it is amazing, and you would never want to be in this circumstances. I can go for a nice walk in the woods and not be almost about to die. But it also it captures that kind of these very strange ducks here. But yeah, Cherry, who all but blind without his spectacles, stepped time without number into the void. Poor fellow. He was dreadfully upset at being such an handicap to us. "I'm so sorry," he panted. "On each occasion we hauled him out. I should have never come." And, "You're the best traveling companion a chap could wish for," I assured him. "Even if you do keep on giving us the slip." It's like, there is that kind of admirable quality of, like, even under the hardest circumstances, these guys kind of keep it together. I mean, part of the thing is they have to keep it together. They've been sort of trained that way from an early age of how they keep it together. So yeah, they get to the penguins, and then they're traveling back, but there are these massive storms that are coming in, these massive Antarctic storms, and they make an igloo. Basically, they chop snow ice blocks and they stack it up, and they make a thing, but they leave the supplies outside, including the tent. And when they go out one time, it's like the tent is gone, it's blown away, and it's like they have to travel all the way back, and they cannot stop each time making an igloo. That it was really a tough expenditure of energy to just make that once, and it's gone. And it's like, you can tell just from reading the sections that it's like, we are so fucked. How are we ever going to get back to our main party without a tent to shelter in each night? And then to literally pile on, they are in this igloo, freezing to death in leather sleeping bags, which are basically just they freeze. Like, the moisture in their bodies gets warm a bit, and then it freezes, and they're in just like a shell. And that happens to their clothing too, is it just the moisture of the body, and it just makes everything like armor, and it cracks and everything like that. And then the roof went on the thing, and the topmost rocks of the walls fell in upon us, together with blankets of drift. And so they spend like a night or so huddled against just kind of the ruined walls, getting snow drifts down on them and just shrugging it off every once in a while. And it's just, oh, that 'twere possible, after long grief and pain, to find the arms of my true love round me once again, which is apparently lines from Tennyson in the middle of this. but they do get out the next day, and they look kind of despairing that they're going to find it, and Bwrs does find the tent. And it's like, nothing will convince me that this is all down to chance, I told Bill. I really believe we've been saved for a purpose. That kind of, he at least has that very much kind of a feeling of the kind of purpose, kind of a religious purpose of a purpose of life. He's also got this thing of kind of duty and obligation, which Cherry at some point just says, that night where you were just doing all that stupid gibberish nonsense, I was contemplating asking for some morphine so I could just sort of end it all. It's like, yeah. Later, Cherry confided that when the tent blew away, he made up his mind to ask Bill for the morphia and put an end to it all. My dear chap, I said, he would never have agreed. I believe that I did ask him, but he couldn't hear me on the account of the wind and you yelling that gibberish about devotion to duty. So they're definitely, you can see why all this politeness and everything helps them kind of maintain kind of a unity and stuff like that. But and they also have just this thing of like Cherry's teeth, the such extreme cold that it's killed off the nerves in his jaw, and page 158, and that whenever he shouted, his splintered teeth sprayed out like crumbs. And they do finally make it back to Castle Rock, which is where they have the camp. At which point they say, there's one of these paragraphs here. There's the whole thing of like 2 days later, when we were within 5 miles of Cape Evans, over breakfast, a mug of hot water thickened with biscuits and a blob of butter, Bill said, "I want to thank you for what you've done. I couldn't have found two better companions, and what's more, I never shall." Neither Cherry or I could reply. Our hearts were too full for words. It may be that the purpose of the worst journey in the world had been to collect eggs, which might prove a scientific theory we'd be unraveling for a far greater mystery on the way. The missing link between God and man is brotherly love, which is definitely kind of fulfilling Bwrs thing. There's something about this. It's just like, these super uptight English guys, like the only way they can actually make bond with another human being is to throw themselves into such extreme situations that they can't help but a bond being formed. Like a near death experience is what they have to put themselves through to actually make these connections with another human being, with another man. But the thing in here that I went, wait a minute, is this phrase, the worst journey in the world, which I went, that was a book, wasn't it? Because I believe I'd heard Steve Donahue talk about it. And indeed, absolutely George Bennett Cherry Garrard, born 1886, died 1959. He did not go on. He did not continue on the journey. With Scott Bwrs and Wilson up to the north, up to the down to the South Pole. He did not go on that journey, probably because of his eyes, I'm assuming. But that he actually did. He survived, and he wrote a memoir about the situation, which was called "The Worst Journey in the World," which is his memoir of this expedition. So very kind of cute of Bainbridge to work that phrase into the work. And I mean, it's kind of believable. You can see that maybe Cherry heard that phrase used by another man and that kind of echoed back to him as like, oh, that's going to be a good title for this entire story, "The Worst Journey in the World." And indeed, I was reading about his stuff here, other than his post-traumatic stress disorder, probably from his experiences in World War One, but also that he required repeated dental treatment because of the damage done to his teeth by the extreme cold of his Antarctic journey. So yeah, this was the fullest. This was so far has probably been the most kind of the depiction of the extreme conditions up here, and of it, of this is the near miss. This is the near miss that they actually they survived. And what is coming up for the final bit here, I know, is the freight train that will smush the people who go on down to the Antarctic, to the South Pole, where they will meet disappointment and then death. All right, that is that chapter. So next chapter, next and final chapter is Captain Lawrence Edward Titus Oates, March 12th, 1912. And yeah, that will be the last chapter. Captain Oates, who has definitely shown himself to be definitely very skeptical of Scott and his judgments, and who seems like the guy has been kind of one of these guys that does have his head on right, at least as depicted in this book and through the viewpoint of various characters in these chapters, even if they don't like him that much. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say, because I assume he goes on this final fatal expedition, and so I'm assuming it's Bainbridge using that information to construct her surmise of what that experience was like. I think they also found journals and documents from that party, so probably also building on that to tell that story. I guess the Bwrs chapter must be pretty highly influenced by Cherry's account of it, since he is the actual guy. He was the eyewitness who lived to write a memoir after the fact about it. So yeah, it's a really densely compacted book. It's I like a historical event where you're seeing it through multiple points of view. You can get a lot of information in there. I'm thinking about Hilary Mantel, who's Thomas Cromwell trilogy I really love, but that is a giant book. I mean, also talking about multiple events, multiple history. So there's a reason why that's so big and this is so thin. This is talking about a single expedition, so it can be very compact. But it's compact, but it's also very very opened up by having so many different points of view, which I'm really enjoying. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.